Jason had worked the night shift at Porter's grocery store for nearly 6 months. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. The job was simple: restock shelves, mop the floors, and check inventory. Most nights he was completely alone, with only the hum of the refrigerators and the occasional crackle of the old intercom system for company. But something about this night felt different. It started with the automatic doors at the entrance. Jason had just finished stocking the frozen foods aisle when he heard the familiar whoosh of the doors sliding open. He froze. It was nearly 3 a.m. The store was closed. No customers, no deliveries. Cautiously, he stepped out from behind the shelves and looked toward the entrance. The doors were wide open, letting in a gust of cold night air. Outside, nothing but the empty parking lot. Jason frowned, rubbing the back of his neck. Faulty sensor, he thought. It had happened before. He grabbed a mop handle and stepped toward the doors, waving it in front of the sensor. The doors slid shut. Problem solved, or so he thought. A few minutes later, Jason decided to check the security cameras. The store had a small office in the back, equipped with an outdated monitor that displayed footage from 6 different cameras. He pulled up the entrance feed. Rewinding the footage, Jason expected to see the doors opening on their own. But what he saw made his blood run cold. A shadow, long and distorted, stood just outside the doors. Motionless, the timestamp showed 2:58 a.m., the exact moment he had heard the doors open. Jason leaned in closer, his eyes glued to the screen. He hit rewind, play, rewind, play. But every time the shadow appeared, the footage glitched. One frame, it was there. The next, gone. A cold sweat dripped down his spine. He switched to the freezer camera, the one inside the walk-in storage at the back of the store. His heart nearly stopped. The freezer door was wide open. Jason's stomach twisted. He hadn't checked the freezer yet. He had been saving it for last, just like every night before. He knew he had locked it earlier in the shift. Employees weren't supposed to leave it open. It was a strict store policy. He grabbed his flashlight and headed toward the back of the store. The hallway leading to the freezer was eerily quiet. Too quiet. As Jason approached the freezer, he noticed something strange. The metal door had frost forming on the outside. That wasn't normal. Freezer doors were insulated to keep the cold in, not out. He hesitated, gripping the handle. A deep breath. Then slowly, he pulled the heavy door open. A blast of icy air hit him like a wall. The inside was pitch black, except for his flashlight beam cutting through the fog of frozen air. The shelves were lined with boxes of frozen meats, vegetables, and ice cream tubs stacked high. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. Footprints, bare footprints in the frost, leading deeper into the freezer. Jason's breath hitched. The prints weren't his. They were too small, and they were fresh. The frost hadn't begun to cover them. Then he heard it, a breath, shaky, slow, right behind him. Jason spun around, his flashlight flickering as it caught movement in the farthest corner of the freezer. His hands trembled. A man stood there. No, not a man. A figure. His skin was pale, almost translucent, with a bluish tint. His eyes were wide, frozen in a state of terror. His lips were cracked and slightly parted, as if he had been whispering moments before. And then, the figure moved. Not a step, not a lunge, just a slight tilt of the head. Jason stumbled backward, his breath coming in short gasps. He tried to move, but his legs felt like ice. His fingers burned from the cold as he reached for the door handle. Then, the whisper came, "Run." It was low, almost like a gust of wind hissing through the frozen shelves. But Jason heard it. His body jolted into action. He spun and lunged for the exit. Just as his fingers wrapped around the handle, the door slammed shut on its own. Panic surged through him. He banged on the door, kicked it, screamed for help, but the only sound in the freezer was his own breath. And the whisper, "He's still in here," Jason whirled around. The figure was closer. The bluish lips moved again, but this time Jason didn't wait to hear the words. He clawed at the door, desperate. His lungs ached from the freezing air. His vision blurred. Then the door burst open. Jason tumbled out, gasping. His manager stood there, eyes wide. "What the hell happened?" Jason turned, pointing toward the freezer. His mouth moved, but no words came out. The figure, it had been right there. But the freezer was empty, just shelves, frost, and the eerie hum of the cooling system. Jason quit the next day. He didn't care about his last paycheck, didn't care about the questions his manager kept asking. He just needed to get out, but the story didn't end there. A few weeks later, a new employee, Michael, took over the night shift. On his first night, he joked about the ghost story Jason had left behind, said it was just an overactive imagination. Then halfway through his shift, Michael walked into the break room, shaking. His manager asked what was wrong. Michael couldn't even speak. He just lifted his hand and pointed to the freezer. His fingers were frostbitten, and on his arm, a handprint, a frozen bluish handprint. They say ghosts don't exist, that the dead can't hurt the living. But if that's true, then who or what was in that freezer? And more importantly, who is still in there now? Story 2, The Forgotten Elevator. Claire worked the night shift as a security guard at an old hospital. Most of the building was abandoned, with only a few floors still in operation. Her job? Monitor the cameras and patrol the empty hallways. It was easy money until she took the wrong elevator. There were 6 elevators in the building, but one was out of service. It hadn't worked in years. The doors were rusted shut and it was marked for demolition. But on one particular night, as Claire walked past it, the doors slid open. Claire hesitated at first, her heart pounding erratically in her chest as she stood before the ominous elevator. It was an old, rusty contraption, seemingly forgotten by time, and the many who had passed it by without a second glance. The logical part of her mind screamed for her to walk away, to ignore the eerie invitation of the forgotten elevator that beckoned her into its shadowy depths. Yet a stronger, more curious part of her, the part that thrived on unraveling mysteries, urged her to step inside and see where this peculiar path might lead. After all, she reasoned, it was probably just a malfunction, a minor glitch in an antiquated system. A quick look couldn't hurt, right? As she cautiously stepped into the elevator, the air inside felt notably heavier, as if it were laden with the secrets of the past. A faint, musty smell wafted around her, reminiscent of an old, dust-covered book left untouched for decades. The interior was barely illuminated by a single flickering bulb that cast long, wavering shadows across the walls, giving the space an even more unsettling ambiance. With a deep breath to steady herself, Claire pressed the button for the ground floor, fully expecting nothing to happen. To her great surprise, the elevator shuddered to life, its ancient gears grinding and groaning as it began its descent into the unknown. Claire's stomach flipped as she realized with a jolt of apprehension that she had no idea where this elevator was taking her. Her radio crackled to life unexpectedly, but the voices on the other end were distorted and eerie, as if they were reaching out to her from another world entirely. The elevator came to a sudden and jarring stop, shaking Claire from her thoughts. The doors slid open with a reluctant creak to reveal a floor she had never seen before. It was a place that wasn't marked on any of the blueprints she had meticulously reviewed during her training. The hallway stretched out before her, a seemingly endless corridor lined with closed doors on either side, each one a potential gateway to further mysteries. Each door bore faded numbers and symbols that were indecipherable to her, adding to the enigma of the place. The air here was cooler, and Claire could feel a slight, unsettling breeze, as if the building itself was alive and breathing. She stepped out cautiously, her flashlight beam slicing through the dense darkness like a knife. As she tentatively walked down the hallway, Claire's footsteps echoed ominously, amplifying the eerie silence that enveloped her. She stopped in front of one of the doors, her hand hovering over the handle as she hesitated, unsure of what she might find on the other side. Gathering her courage, she pushed the door open, its hinges protesting with a loud creak, to reveal a small room cluttered with old hospital equipment. Dust lay thickly over everything, like a heavy blanket that had not been disturbed in years, and cobwebs draped the ceiling, swaying gently in the draft. In a corner of the room, she noticed a desk upon which lay a time-worn journal. Its pages were yellowed with age, the ink faded, but still legible enough to piece together the words. Her curiosity piqued, Claire began to flip through the pages. It appeared to be the journal of a doctor who once worked in the hospital, documenting strange occurrences and mysterious patients who were admitted but never discharged. As she delved deeper into the journal, Claire realized that this floor was once part of the hospital's psychiatric wing, now long forgotten and buried in the annals of time. The journal alluded to experiments and treatments that were both radical and controversial, practices that were eventually abandoned and erased from official records, left to be forgotten by all. Claire understood she had stumbled upon something significant, something that could potentially alter the understanding of the hospital's history. But as she stood there, reading the journal's haunting entries, the shadows around her seemed to grow longer, and a chill ran down her spine. She wasn't alone here, and whatever had been left behind was beginning to stir, as if awakened by her presence. Realizing the urgency of the situation, Claire decided it was time to leave. She carefully pocketed the journal, clutching it tightly as she hastened back to the elevator. Her mind was a whirlwind of questions and theories, but her immediate priority was survival. As she reached the elevator, she pressed the button to ascend, the doors closing with a sense of finality that sent shivers down her spine. Back on the familiar floors, Claire was greeted by the comforting hum of the modern hospital's machinery, a stark contrast to the eerie silence of the hidden floor. She knew she had to share her findings, to bring the forgotten stories of the past to light, to ensure that the secrets she had uncovered were not lost once again. But as she turned to leave, the elevator doors behind her slid shut with a quiet click, and she couldn't shake the feeling that this was merely the beginning of a much larger mystery, one that was waiting to be unraveled. Story 3. The Watcher in the Parking Lot. Marcus was a janitor at a 24-hour warehouse. His shift ended at 3 a.m., and every night he parked his car at the farthest end of the lot, where no other vehicles were. It was peaceful, until it wasn't. One night, as he walked to his car, he noticed something strange. A man standing completely still under the flickering streetlight. At first, Marcus thought it was just another worker, but as he got closer, he realized something was off. The man wasn't moving. He wasn't even breathing. He was just staring. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He hesitated for a moment, but curiosity drove him to continue. As he approached, the intermittent glow of the light revealed details of the stranger. His clothes were ordinary, but his eyes were fixed on Marcus, as if they were looking straight into his soul. He stopped a few meters from the man, trying not to show his nervousness. "Hey, are you okay?" Marcus asked, his voice a bit shakier than he would have liked. The figure remained silent, his eyes unblinking, adding an almost surreal quality to the encounter. Marcus's instinct urged him to retreat, but something deeper compelled him to stand his ground. There was an odd familiarity about this man, as if he had stepped out of a half-remembered dream. "Do you need help?" Marcus continued, trying to maintain a calm demeanor despite the growing unease. The wind seemed to pick up, whispering through the trees and carrying the echoes of his own voice back to him. For a moment, the man's lips twitched, as if he was about to speak, But then they settled back into a thin line. The streetlight above flickered again, casting shadows that danced ominously around them. Marcus shifted his weight, glancing over his shoulder to ensure the path back to his car was clear. Suddenly, a low, almost imperceptible sound came from the stranger, a murmur that was lost to the wind before it reached Marcus's ears. The man tilted his head slightly, as if acknowledging an unspoken understanding between them. Marcus felt a strange connection, as if the stranger was a part of a larger puzzle he was yet to piece together. "I don't know what you want," Marcus said softly, more to himself than to the unmoving figure. "But I hope you find peace." With that, he slowly backed away, keeping his eyes on the man until he was at a safe distance. The parking lot's eerie silence enveloped him once more as he turned and walked briskly towards his car. His mind buzzed with unanswered questions, each one more perplexing than the last. As he drove away, Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror. The streetlight flickered one last time, and the man was gone, leaving Marcus with only the haunting memory of his gaze. There was no response, just the silence of the early morning and the sound of the wind passing through the nearby trees. Marcus tried once more, but the man remained motionless, like a living statue. Marcus took a step back, feeling the urgency to leave. He looked around, searching for any sign of life, but the parking lot was deserted. It was as if the whole world was on pause. The stillness was unnerving, pressing down on him like a weight. He turned his gaze back to the enigmatic figure, hoping for some sudden change that might explain this uncanny scene. But the man stood as rigid as ever, his eyes locked with Marcus's, holding an intensity that seemed to defy the natural order of things. Marcus shivered slightly, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the cool night air. He took another step back, his instinct screaming at him to retreat, to escape whatever strange game was unfolding in this forgotten corner of the world. Yet he couldn't quite bring himself to break the connection, as if some invisible thread tied him to this mysterious stranger. Just then, a distant sound broke through the silence, a car door slamming shut, somewhere deep within the warehouse. Locked. It was a reminder of the real world, the world that waited just beyond the edge of this bizarre encounter. Marcus seized the moment, taking a deep breath to steady himself before reluctantly turning his back on the man. As he walked briskly towards his car, the tension in his muscles began to ease, replaced by a mix of relief and lingering curiosity. Who was that man? What did he want? The questions churned in his mind, but Marcus knew he wouldn't find answers standing there in the dark. Reaching his car, he fumbled with the keys, casting one last glance over his shoulder. The man was still there, an inscrutable silhouette against the pale glow of the streetlight. Marcus felt a pang of something akin to regret, though for what he couldn't quite say. Sliding into the driver's seat, Marcus started the engine, the comforting purr of the vehicle grounding him in reality. He drove away slowly, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the man following. But the parking lot remained empty, save for the shadows that played on its edges. As the warehouse receded into the distance, Marcus resolved to unravel the mystery of the watcher in the parking lot, certain that this was only the beginning of a much larger story. Concluding it must be a prank, Marcus decided to step away and head to his car. Before turning his back, the man finally moved. Slowly, he raised an arm and pointed to something behind Marcus. With his heart racing, Marcus turned quickly, only to see his own reflection in the car window. There was nothing threatening there. When he turned back, the man had vanished, as if he had never been there. The parking lot felt emptier than ever, the silence more pronounced without the mysterious figure. Marcus stood still for a moment, processing what had just happened. The encounter left him with an unsettling mix of fear and fascination. As he Sat in his car, he couldn't shake the feeling that the man had been trying to convey something important. His reflection in the window seemed to hold a clue, a message he had yet to decipher. Maybe it was a metaphorical gesture, a prompt for introspection, or a warning about something unseen. Driving home, Marcus's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. The roads were deserted, the world still and quiet, amplifying his introspection. He pondered the significance of the encounter, wondering if it was a figment of his imagination or if there was a deeper truth lurking beneath the surface. He resolved to keep his eyes open, to be vigilant for any signs that might help him understand the enigma of the watcher in the parking lot. As the city lights gave way to the comforting darkness of the suburbs, Marcus knew that this was not the end, but the start of a journey into the unknown. The drive home was marked by confused thoughts and lingering nervousness. Who was that man? And why had he pointed to the car? Marcus couldn't find answers, but he knew that night wouldn't be easily forgotten. In the following days, the image of the stranger under the flickering light haunted him. He began to investigate discreetly, asking colleagues if anyone had seen the man. The answer was always the same. No one knew anything. Even without concrete answers, Marcus realized he wasn't alone that night. Something or someone was watching, and he was determined to find out what it was. He started by reviewing the security footage from the parking lot, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious figure. Hours spent poring over grainy videos yielded nothing unusual. The man seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish just as inexplicably. Frustration mingled with curiosity, driving Marcus to dig deeper. He found himself frequenting the local library, buried in books about urban legends and local folklore, searching for any mention of similar encounters. He learned about tales of spirits caught between worlds, stories whispered in hushed tones by those who believed in the supernatural. Though skeptical, Marcus couldn't help but feel a connection to these narratives, as if they held a sliver of truth about his own experience. His search led him to an old, dusty tome, its pages yellowed with age. It spoke of a guardian, a silent watcher who appeared in times of great personal crossroads, guiding lost souls towards introspection and growth. The description struck a chord with Marcus, resonating with the man's silent yet poignant gesture towards his reflection. As days turned into weeks, Marcus found himself reflecting on his life, contemplating changes he'd long avoided. The encounter, though enigmatic, had sparked a journey within him, a quest for understanding not just of the mysterious watcher, but of himself. One evening, as he sat by the window, watching the world outside, something shifted within Marcus. He realized that perhaps the stranger's purpose wasn't to frighten him, but to awaken him, to prompt a deeper look into the mirror of his own life. With newfound resolve, Marcus embraced the mystery, accepting that some questions might remain unanswered, and that was okay. It was the journey, after all, that truly mattered.